What's up, guys? Coach Andrew Simmons here from Lifelong Endurance, and today we're talking all about gray zone training, or the dreaded Zone 3 plateau. What I want to drive home to you guys today is that if you're someone that's going out and doing a lot of your runs a little bit hard, finishing workouts feeling like a race, and not really finding that there's a whole lot to this whole polarized training model thing, I'm going to do my best today to try to convince you guys otherwise and explain why Zone 3 training, especially for newer runners and even seasoned runners, is the thing to avoid. And the reason is, we'll get to that. But what we're going to talk all about first is the idea of having and understanding your zones. If you have not gone out and recently tested your zones or gone out and set either a 5K, 20-minute, or 30-minute threshold test, then we're not going to be able to make a lot of progress here today, because I need you guys to go out and actually have that. If you have a good understanding of where your zones are, then we're going to dive right in today. And the first place we're going to dive into is the psychological side of things. I have to try to convince you guys that Zone 2 running and building your aerobic capacity is the number one thing you can do to become a faster runner. And the reason is that if you do not have the aerobic capacity or the low aerobic base, then you won't be able to have the ability to do larger and larger aerobic workouts without truly tipping into an anaerobic or too high of an aerobic zone before you truly need to. And what I mean by that is that if you're only going out and running true aerobic runs of 3 to 4 miles and not getting in, say, longer aerobic efforts of 60, 70 to 90 minutes, if you're training for a half up to 2 to 2.5 hours, then you're not going to be able to withstand a workout that's something that requires 20 minutes of warm-up, maybe 3 by a mile, and then a 20-minute cool down. Even if you're doing 7-minute miles for that workout on 3 minutes of a jog rest, that whole workout comes out to 70 minutes. If you're not doing even a long run that's going to support that, then you don't have the aerobic capacity to finish that workout efficiently. And that is the key here, is efficiency. You could probably gut your way through it, and I'm sure some of you are at home saying, I could do that no problem. But are you doing it efficiently is the question. And a big thing that we're going to talk about throughout this video is the idea of a polarized training model, meaning that we're spending a lot of time in our low aerobic zone, Zone 1, Zone 2, if we follow a traditional 5-zone model, kind of skipping that Zone 3, ideally, and then spending most of our time at our aerobic threshold and above, and spending time and more time there, that if we build a great aerobic capacity, it allows us the ability to do more work in these higher zones. Now, what's key here is that you may be able to muscle out a lot of time up here, but are you able to actually recover from it? And so one of the most important things is having a number of aerobic days spaced out in between your workouts. The way that I program a number of my athletes is Tuesday, Friday workouts, where we're doing Wednesday and Thursday aerobically. And then the progression of how I coach my athletes falls in there. And so anything could be like intervals on Tuesday and longer work on Friday, or flip those vice versa, depending on the needs of my athletes. The big thing that I want to drive into next is that the reason to avoid this Zone 3 area from a physiological perspective is that it doesn't really serve us a whole lot. That area, physiologically isn't really telling our body great things. If we think about it from a metabolic perspective, at the Zone 2 level, we are at a majority burning free fatty acid, or as many of you consider it, burning fat as fuel. As we move into the higher aerobic area, we're burning carbohydrate as fuel. So what's important here is that we don't send a mixed signal by moving from the low aerobic area into that blended area, because we're not actually teaching our body to be principled. Now, there isn't a light switch per se that once you hit a certain point, you're only going to use carbohydrates. Our bodies do operate in a small mixture here, but the reality is that your body is not enjoying or getting the most benefit, I should say, out of that Zone 3 area. Lastly, I think the thing that we have to look at is, how do we actually define results? How do we know we're making progress in this polarized training model? And the reality is that if your aerobic base pace is dropping. Let's say you're out aerobically at 135 to 142 beats per minute. This is just what I run. And I notice that my aerobic pace is dropping from 8 flat per mile to 750 to 745. I know that the multiplicative effect of that 10 to 15 seconds I've improved is going to be a greater improvement in the half marathon and the full marathon, which is the majority of the athletes that I coach here at Lifelong Endurance, which is what I work with. So to kind of wrap this up, workouts follow a hard days hard, easy days easy approach. Again, those 2 easy days in between your workouts is super important. We have to break free of that mindset that slow running is useless and not helpful. That's actually what builds our capacity. And really those easy days and our true recovery days, and there really isn't a too slow approach from the way that I view things. The last point I want to get across more than anything is that if you sacrifice your aerobic capacity, you're ultimately shutting off your ability to continue to improve week after week and month after month. That's all I've got for you guys. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys on the next one.